Okay, I'm back with this next part of our chapter, finishing that last chapter that we read. I think it was chapter 10, Slave Catcher. And remember, we left off with it wasn't until the next morning that Rosebud learned that Harriet Tubman and the rest of her fellow runaways had headed north once more under cover of darkness and left her behind. Rosebud pulled away from Mary Woodhouse's hand and turned her face to the wall, sobbing into the pillow. "Don't cry so, child," said the motherly woman. "Thou art too sick to continue the journey. They had no choice but to go without thee." They could have waited till I'm better," Rosebud hiccuped in a muffled voice. "Humph! It's much harder hiding 7 black souls than one in a small white family. Nay, I agree with Mrs. Tubman. They needed to push on to the next station. They will wait for thee in Philadelphia." Philadelphia, that was another 50 miles. Mary had told her that much. She was only halfway to freedom, but she could never make it alone. She didn't know the way. An overwhelming feeling of despair set off new sobs into the pillow. Later that afternoon, it was Isaac who came up to the little attic room with some hot broth for their patient. "What day is it?" Rosebud asked hoarsely. "Why, it's 6th day," said Isaac. 6th day? What a funny way of talking these Quakers had. But Rosebud was too proud to ask what he meant. She thought a moment. If Sunday was the first day of the week, then 6th day would be Friday. Issue day at the Powers plantation had been the first Saturday of October, and she had run away that night, which meant she'd been gone 6 days already. Only 6 days? It felt like a lifetime. She realized Isaac was staring at her. "Thee has been crying," he said finally. Rosebud looked away. "Don't worry," Isaac said. "My mother will take good care of thee, and thee can use my room as long as thee likes." Startled, Rosebud turned her head back and stared at the boy. His room? It had never occurred to her that he had given up his room for her. She just thought all white people had extra rooms in their houses. That day and all the next, Rosebud worried. The Woodhouses were being very nice to her, true, but she didn't want to stay here any longer. She wanted to be with Harriet Tubman and the others. She wanted to find her pappy, but how? She felt so alone, more alone than she'd felt since her mammy died and her pappy had run away. By the next day, Rosebud was feeling much better, even though she was still coughing. That's good, Mrs. Woodhouse said. "Thee has to get all of that stuff out of thy chest. Now here, put these on and come down to supper tonight. Thee must get thy strength back." And she laid Rosebud's dresses, bandana, and shawl on the bed, freshly washed and dried. At supper time, Rosebud got dressed and timidly made her way down the narrow stairs. Mary Woodhouse was setting supper on a plain wooden table, nicely crafted with 4 straight-backed chairs around it. Benjamin Woodhouse smiled at Rosebud and held a chair for her. Then the rest of the family sat and bowed their heads while Benjamin said a blessing. As the food was served, Mary chatted away, asking Rosebud questions about her family. But Rosebud was so nervous sitting at the same table with a white family that she could only nod yes or no. Finally, Benjamin saw her distress and guided the conversation away from the girl. "Tomorrow is first day, Papa," said Isaac. "Can Rosebud come with us to the worship meeting?" Rosebud looked startled. She'd never been to church before, but a white church? "No, I'm afraid not," said Benjamin, shaking his head. "But Papa," Isaac protested. Rosebud didn't know whether to be disappointed or relieved, but it was just as she thought. White folks, even Quakers, didn't want black folks in their church. "Don't forget that Rosebud, young as she is a runaway," Benjamin explained. "We are hiding her. No one must know she is here." "Well then, in that case, I will stay home to keep her company," said Isaac. Again, his father shook his head. "Then people will wonder where thou art, and we don't want to tell a lie. We must do everything just as we always do. We will go to meeting tomorrow, and Rosebud must stay here." The next morning, the Woodhouse family walked through the woods to the Quaker meeting house, leaving Rosebud at home. As the hours ticked away on the wall clock in the front hall, Rosebud thought, "This is my chance. I could leave now and no one would stop me." But then she realized she did not know how to find her friends. She could go back and follow the Choptank River, but Harriet had said that it soon dwindled to a creek in Delaware. Where would she go then? And she didn't have a travel pass, Any white person could stop any black person at any time and demand to see a pass from his or her master. It was the law. With a sinking feeling, Rosebud realized she was trapped, just as much as if she were tied up in the stable as her brother Isaac had been. The next morning, Rosebud got dressed and came down to the kitchen where Mrs. Woodhouse was bustling about. "Mrs. Woodhouse, ma'am," Rosebud ventured, "when will I be able to leave and join my friends in Philadelphia?" "Soon, dear, soon," said Mrs. Woodhouse, fanning the wood in the cast-iron stove and tucking a stray wisp of brown hair under her starched white cap. "We must be sure that thou art completely well. Oh, here," she handed Rosebud a basket. "Will thee go out to the barn and gather some eggs for our breakfast? I cannot make this fire burn right." With a sigh, Rosebud took the basket and let herself out the back door of the house. As she rounded the corner and started down the path to the barn, she was startled to see Isaac talking to a strange man in the barnyard. She stopped and stood uncertainly, not sure what to do. Then her mouth went completely dry. The man talking to Isaac Woodhouse was the white-haired slave catcher that had taken her brother away on the chain gang. And you know what? I know, I hate to do it to you again, but I have to stop there because it's already past the time limit where it's going to take too long, and we've got a couple more pages, so you'll have to wait till Monday to find out what happens to Rosebud. But Nana, I hope that's going to be okay. I'm sorry to leave you on such a cliffhanger, but enjoy. I'll talk to you and you'll get to hear the rest of it, I promise, on Monday. Take care.